Maya was a quiet girl with a gentle smile. She was only 12 years old, but her life had already taught her more about strength than many adults ever knew. Born blind, she never saw the world with her eyes, yet she learned to see it with her heart. She lived with her father, Marcus, who raised her alone after her mother passed away when Maya was still a toddler. Marcus was a man of few words, always calm, always steady. To Maya, he was simply Dad, the one person she could trust without question. When a new school year began, Maya was nervous. It was her first time attending a school in a different city. Her father had recently moved them for a better opportunity, and while Marcus believed it would give Maya a fresh start, she worried about fitting in. She held her cane tightly as she walked through the big school doors on her first day. Every sound echoed sharply in her ears, the chatter of kids, the slam of lockers, the footsteps rushing past her. She followed the sound of a teacher's voice and introduced herself quietly. At first, things seemed fine. Some classmates helped her find her desk, and others whispered hi when she passed by. Maya hoped maybe this time would be different, maybe she would make friends who saw her as more than just a girl with a cane. But within the first week, her fears began to take shape. A group of kids, slightly older than her, noticed her cane and began to laugh whenever she walked by. At first it was just giggles. Then came the whispers, "Watch out, here she comes, don't trip, she can't see you," words spoken just loud enough for her to hear. Maya tried to ignore them, but their voices followed her in the hallways. Sometimes they would slide her chair away from her desk so she would fumble trying to sit down. Other times they would move her books and giggle when she searched for them with her hands. It was small things, but to Maya it felt like the whole world was laughing at her. The teachers didn't always notice. To them, Maya looked like a brave girl handling herself well. She never complained, never raised her voice, never showed her pain. At home, she smiled at her father, pretending everything was fine. Marcus always asked about her day, and Maya always gave the same answer, it was okay. Deep inside, she didn't want to worry him. She knew her father carried his own burdens. She didn't know much about his past, only that he used to serve in the military and that he was very strong. To her, he was like a rock, always there, always steady. But in school, she felt small. Every day was a new challenge. She would walk to the cafeteria, cane tapping against the floor, listening for the sound of trays and voices. Sometimes kids would move quietly out of her way, but the bullies never missed a chance. They would whisper cruel things like, "She doesn't even know we're here," or "Bet she can't even find her lunch." One day, they pulled her tray away just as she reached for it. She stood there, hand in the air, confused, while the group snickered. A kind girl from another table finally helped her, but the laughter echoed in Maya's ears for the rest of the day. Despite everything, Maya tried to stay positive. She loved learning. She listened carefully to lessons and memorized everything the teacher said. Her mind was sharp, and she often answered questions others couldn't. Sometimes this made the bullies even angrier. They didn't like that the blind girl was smarter than them. So they found new ways to bring her down. One afternoon in class, Maya raised her hand and gave a perfect answer to a tough math problem. The teacher praised her, saying she was one of the brightest students. The bullies rolled their eyes. Later that day, as Maya walked down the hall, someone stuck out a foot. She stumbled, barely catching herself with her cane. The group laughed loudly, and though Maya's cheeks burned with embarrassment, she didn't cry. She held her head high and kept walking, even though every step felt heavy. At home, she retreated to her room. She loved listening to music, feeling the rhythm wash away the noise of the day. She also loved the sound of her father's voice reading books to her. Marcus noticed that she had grown quieter since starting the new school. She didn't tell him about the cruel laughter or the tricks. She didn't want him to think she was weak. She wanted him to believe she was strong, just like him. But Marcus was no ordinary father. He had lived through situations far more dangerous than a middle school hallway. His instincts told him something was wrong. When Maya came home with her shoulders slumped, he noticed. When she forced a smile, he saw it didn't reach her eyes. Still, he didn't push her to talk. He waited, watching, knowing the truth would come out in time. For Maya, each day became a test of courage. She woke up early, put on her neat school clothes, and walked bravely into a place where she never knew what would happen next. Sometimes she heard whispers as soon as she entered the classroom. Other times she felt safe for a while, until the laughter started again. But even in her quiet struggle, she refused to give up. She wanted to learn, she wanted to succeed, and she wanted to make her father proud. The cruelest part was how the bullies acted when teachers were around. They smiled, answered questions, and pretended to be innocent. But the moment the teacher's back was turned, they struck again with their little tricks. Maya began to feel trapped, caught in a cycle where no adult really saw what was happening. Yet, despite the hurt, she carried herself with dignity. She never shouted back or raised her voice. She believed in kindness, even when it wasn't returned. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strength she didn't even realize she had. One rainy afternoon, as she walked home with her father holding her hand, she listened to the sound of raindrops and thought about her day. She wanted so badly to tell him everything, to let out the pain she carried. But she stayed quiet, only squeezing his hand a little tighter. Marcus felt the squeeze. He didn't say anything, but deep inside, he promised himself he would find out what was troubling his daughter. The days went on, and the bullies grew bolder. Maya's heart grew heavier, but her determination remained. She didn't know it yet, but the very person she tried to protect from her pain, her father, was the one who would soon change everything. Maya tried her best to stay strong, but the days at school were becoming harder. The group of bullies no longer settled for small whispers and little pranks. Their cruelty began to grow, and every time Maya thought it couldn't get worse, they found a new way to hurt her. It started one morning when she walked into class, feeling hopeful because she had studied all night for a quiz. She placed her books on the desk and sat down carefully, but when she opened her bag, she realized her notebook was gone. Confused, she searched through every pocket, but it wasn't there. From the corner of the room, she heard muffled laughter. One of the bullies had taken her notebook earlier and hidden it. When the teacher asked everyone to take out their notes, Maya sat silently, unsure what to say. She didn't want to accuse anyone, so she whispered, "I forgot mine." The teacher looked surprised, because Maya was always prepared. At lunch, the same group followed her. They waited until she sat down, then quietly slipped her juice box away. When she reached for it, her hand met an empty table. The sound of snickering filled the room. Maya swallowed hard, holding back tears. She ate only a little and left quickly, her cane tapping on the floor as she walked. The bullying wasn't just in the classroom or cafeteria. It followed her in the hallways, in the playground, and even on the bus ride home. One afternoon, as she climbed onto the bus, someone whispered, "Careful, don't fall," and stuck out a foot. She stumbled, catching herself just in time. The bus driver didn't notice, but the kids in the back laughed loudly. Maya's face turned hot with shame. She sat quietly in the front seat, staring down even though she couldn't see. What hurt Maya most wasn't just the tricks and whispers, but the way some other students stayed silent. Some looked uncomfortable, some turned away, and a few even joined in the laughter just to fit in. She wished someone would speak up, but nobody did. At home, Maya tried to hide her feelings. She forced a smile when her father asked about school. "It was fine," she would say softly. Marcus, however, noticed the tiny changes. He saw how her shoulders slumped more often, how her once bright voice grew quieter, and how she sometimes sat alone in her room for hours. He didn't press her, but he watched closely. The turning point came on a Friday afternoon. Maya was in the cafeteria, carrying her tray carefully. The bullies were waiting. One of them whispered, "Let's record this." Another pulled out a phone. As Maya walked by, they quietly slid a chair into her path. Her cane touched it, but too late. She stumbled, and her tray crashed to the floor. Food spilled everywhere. The cafeteria went silent for a moment, then laughter erupted from the back of the room. The group recorded her as she knelt down, trying to pick up her scattered lunch. A kind boy tried to help her, but the bullies uploaded the video online before she even got up. By the end of the day, half the school had seen it. Some laughed, some felt bad, but the damage was done. Maya heard whispers as she walked through the halls, "That's her, the one from the video." She felt like the walls were closing in on her. That night, when she got home, she went straight to her room and cried quietly into her pillow. She didn't want her father to hear, but her sobs were too hard to hide. Marcus stood outside her door, listening. His heart tightened. He had faced storms, battles, and danger in his life, but nothing hurt him more than hearing his daughter cry. He knocked gently and stepped inside. Maya quickly wiped her tears, pretending nothing was wrong. But Marcus sat beside her and placed a strong, steady hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to hide from me," he said softly. "Whatever it is, I'm here." For a moment, Maya stayed quiet. Then the words spilled out. She told him about the whispers, the pranks, the laughter, and finally about the video. She told him how small and broken she felt. Marcus listened silently, his jaw tightening, his eyes filled with pain and anger he didn't show. When she finished, he hugged her tightly. "You are not weak," he whispered. "You are stronger than they will ever know." That night, after Maya went to bed, Marcus sat alone in the living room. Memories of his Navy SEAL days came flooding back. He had survived missions where failure was not an option, trained in discipline, endurance, and resilience. He had faced enemies far more dangerous than middle school bullies, yet nothing compared to this battle protecting his daughter's spirit. He knew he couldn't simply storm into the school and scare the children away, though every part of him wanted to. He had to think carefully. This wasn't about revenge, it was about teaching respect, about showing his daughter that no matter how cruel people could be, there was always a way to rise above. The next morning, Marcus decided to quietly visit the school. He didn't announce himself, just walked through the halls, speaking briefly with teachers. He noticed the way students looked at Maya when she walked by. Some smiled kindly, but the bullies smirked. He watched closely, his sharp eyes missing nothing. Years of training had taught him to read people quickly, and he could see the arrogance in their posture, the way they whispered and nudged each other. He didn't confront them yet. Instead, he spoke to the principal, calmly explaining what Maya had told him. The principal was surprised, because Maya had never complained. Marcus's calm voice carried weight, and the principal promised to investigate. But Marcus knew it wasn't enough. These children needed more than a warning. They needed to understand the true meaning of strength. Meanwhile, Maya felt a mix of relief and fear after sharing the truth with her father. She was glad he knew, but she worried he might be angry or do something extreme. She didn't want to be the reason for trouble. But Marcus reassured her with his steady presence. "Trust me," he told her. "I'll handle this the right way." Over the weekend, Marcus and Maya spent time together. They went to the park, walked by the lake, and talked about little things. Marcus reminded her of her worth, telling her that blindness did not make her less, it made her unique, strong, and capable in ways others couldn't understand. His words gave her courage, though the thought of facing school again on Monday still filled her with dread. On Sunday night, as Marcus prepared for the week, his plan became clear. He wasn't just going to protect Maya from the bullies, he was going to teach them, their parents, and even the school what it meant to respect someone different. He didn't need anger or threats. His presence alone, his calm but firm words, would be enough to shake them. Maya went to bed early, holding on to her father's reassurance. She didn't know what he was planning, but she trusted him. She always had. What she didn't realize was that her father, the man she thought of simply as dad, was preparing to reveal a side of himself she had never truly seen: the disciplined warrior, the protector, the Navy SEAL who carried lessons of courage and honor wherever he went. And soon, the bullies who thought she was powerless would come face to face with the strength they never expected. Monday morning came with heavy clouds hanging low in the sky. Maya woke up early, her heart beating faster than usual. She dreaded going back to school, knowing the bullies would still be there, waiting with their whispers and cruel laughter. But she also felt a little different this time. Her father's words from the weekend echoed in her mind: "You are stronger than they will ever know." She dressed neatly, held her cane firmly, and walked beside her father to the bus stop. Marcus walked quietly, his calm presence giving her courage. He didn't say much, but his steady stride told her that he had everything under control. Maya couldn't see the determination in his eyes, but she could feel it in the way he held her hand just a little tighter than usual. At school, the day began like any other. The halls buzzed with chatter, the lockers clanged shut, and teachers hurried to their classrooms. Maya tried to focus on her lessons, but she knew the group of bullies was watching. They smirked when she walked by, whispered to each other, and waited for the right moment to strike. But something strange happened that day. When they tried their little tricks, they noticed someone watching them closely. Marcus had returned to the school, this time not just to speak with teachers but to observe quietly. He stood near the office, walked through the halls, and even visited the cafeteria, blending in as if he were simply a parent checking on his child. But his sharp eyes missed nothing. He saw the way the bullies nudged each other when Maya walked past, the way they pretended to be innocent when teachers looked their way. Marcus studied them carefully, the same way he had once studied dangerous targets during his missions. Every movement, every smirk, every careless word told him more about their behavior. He didn't see enemies, he saw children, but children who needed to learn a lesson about respect and kindness. And he knew exactly how to teach it. That afternoon, Maya came home with her head lowered. The bullies had whispered again in class, making her stumble over her words when she tried to answer a question. She felt embarrassed, even though she had known the right answer. Marcus sat with her at the kitchen table. His calm voice broke the silence. "I saw them today," he said. Maya froze. She hadn't expected him to be at the school. Her father explained how he had walked through the halls and seen the way the bullies acted. Maya's face turned red with shame, not because of what he said, but because she didn't want him to see her pain. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want you to know everything." Marcus reached over and gently lifted her chin so she faced him. "You never have to apologize for what others do," he said firmly. "This is not your fault. But it's time we make sure it stops." Over the next few days, Marcus carefully planned his approach. He didn't want anger to be the answer. He believed in discipline, in respect, in teaching lessons that would last. So he requested a meeting with the principal, the bullies, and their parents. The principal, already aware of the bullying from Marcus's earlier visit, agreed quickly. The news of the meeting spread through the school, and whispers followed Maya again, but this time they were different. Some kids were curious, others surprised. The bullies looked nervous, though they tried to hide it behind smirks. They didn't know who Maya's father really was. To them, he was just a quiet man who picked up his daughter. They had no idea he was a former Navy SEAL, a man who had spent years in training, discipline, and missions that required the highest form of courage. The day of the meeting arrived. Maya sat beside her father in the principal's office, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She felt nervous, unsure of what would happen. Across the room sat the bullies with their parents, some looking embarrassed, others defensive. The boys avoided Marcus's eyes, shifting uncomfortably in their chairs. Marcus sat calmly, his posture straight, his face steady. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he spoke slowly, clearly, and with a weight that filled the room. He told the story of his daughter, how she had faced challenges since birth, how she walked bravely into school every day despite her blindness, and how cruel it was for others to make her journey harder. The room grew quiet. Even the parents who had come in ready to defend their children began to shift uncomfortably. Marcus then revealed a little of his past, not in detail, but enough for them to understand. He explained how he had served in the Navy, how he had learned that real strength wasn't in hurting the weak but in protecting them. He talked about his missions, about teamwork, about how every life mattered. His voice remained calm, but his words carried power. "My daughter is blind," he said softly, "but she sees the world more clearly than many people with perfect vision. She sees it with kindness. She sees it with courage. And that courage deserves respect, not cruelty." The bullies lowered their heads. For the first time, they realized the weight of what they had done. They had thought it was funny, harmless even, but hearing it in Marcus's steady voice made them see it differently. Their parents glanced at them, their faces filled with disappointment. Maya sat quietly, her heart pounding. She had never heard her father speak like this before. To her, he was always just dad, gentle and strong. But here, in this room, she saw another side of him, the leader, the warrior, the man who commanded respect without raising his voice. The principal thanked Marcus for his words and promised stricter action against bullying. The parents nodded, some apologizing directly to Maya. The boys mumbled their apologies too, though their voices were barely above whispers. After the meeting, Marcus walked Maya out of the office, his arm resting gently on her shoulder. "How do you feel?" he asked. She smiled faintly, still overwhelmed. "Safe," she said. Marcus's eyes softened. "That's all I ever want." But even though the meeting had ended, Marcus knew the lesson wasn't finished. He planned to visit the school more often, not as a threat, but as a reminder that respect and kindness were not optional. His presence alone would show the students that someone was watching, someone who believed in discipline and dignity. Maya noticed the difference the very next day. When she walked into the cafeteria, the whispers were quieter. Some students who had once laughed now greeted her politely. A few even offered to sit with her. The bullies stayed silent, their earlier smirks replaced with downcast eyes. It was as if the whole school had shifted, the atmosphere lighter, safer. For Maya, it wasn't just about the bullying stopping. It was about knowing she wasn't alone. She realized her father had not only protected her but had also taught everyone around her a powerful lesson. And though she didn't know every detail of his past, she now understood that his strength came from more than muscles or training. It came from his heart, from his belief that every person deserved respect. As the week went on, Maya felt her confidence growing again. She answered questions in class without fear, walked through the halls with her cane tapping confidently, and even smiled when she heard footsteps behind her, no longer expecting cruel laughter. She knew the battle wasn't fully over, there would always be challenges, but she also knew she had her father by her side. And the bullies who once thought she was powerless now knew the truth. Behind the quiet blind girl was a father who carried the courage of a Navy SEAL and the unshakable love of a protector. The week after the meeting felt different for Maya. She still carried her cane with the same careful steps, but her heart was lighter. The halls that once felt full of whispers now seemed calmer. Some students still stared, but their looks were not cruel anymore. Some even smiled at her, and a few whispered friendly greetings when she passed. It wasn't perfect, but it was a change, and Maya noticed it. Her father's words had done more than just silence the bullies. They had spread across the school like a quiet lesson. Teachers noticed the shift too. They kept a closer eye on things, and when students laughed at others, the teachers stepped in faster. For the first time in weeks, Maya felt like she could breathe freely. Still, she carried the memory of what had happened. The hurt didn't disappear overnight. She remembered the laughter, the video, the whispers in the cafeteria. But when she thought about those moments now, she also remembered her father sitting calmly in the principal's office, his voice steady, his words strong. The memory gave her strength. One day, as she walked into the classroom, she felt the tension rise again. The bullies were there, quieter now, but still watching. She heard them whisper to each other, but it wasn't the same kind of cruel laughter. It was more like nervous chatter, as if they were unsure how to act around her. Maya sat at her desk, opened her books, and listened carefully to the lesson. For the first time, she didn't feel the heat of embarrassment on her face. She felt calm. Her father, however, wasn't finished. Marcus knew that children could change, but only if they truly understood what respect meant. He didn't want Maya to simply be left alone, he wanted her to be valued for who she was. That weekend, he spoke to the principal again. He offered to visit the school and share some of the lessons he had learned in his years of service, not about war, but about teamwork, discipline, and courage. The principal agreed eagerly, knowing that Marcus's words could have a lasting impact on the students. The following week, the school gathered in the auditorium. Students filled the seats, curious about the visitor. Some had heard whispers about Maya's father, that he had been in the Navy, that he was some kind of hero. The bullies sat in the back, quiet for once. Marcus stood on the stage, not in a uniform, but in simple clothes. He didn't raise his voice to grab attention. Instead, he waited until the room was still, then began speaking in his calm, deep voice. He talked about courage, not the kind found in fighting, but the kind found in standing up for what is right. He explained how real strength was not about being the loudest or the toughest, but about protecting those who needed help. He told stories about his missions, but not in dramatic detail. He spoke about trust, about how he had to rely on others and how they had to rely on him. He explained that in the most dangerous situations, the smallest mistake could cost lives, and the only way to succeed was through respect and teamwork. Every person mattered, no matter their background, no matter their struggles. The students listened quietly. Even the ones who usually whispered and giggled during assemblies stayed silent. Marcus's presence filled the room, steady and commanding without being harsh. He ended his talk with a simple sentence: "The way you treat people shows the kind of person you are. If you want to be strong, then learn to lift others up, not tear them down." When the assembly ended, the students clapped. Some clapped out of respect, others out of admiration. Maya, sitting in the front row, felt her chest swell with pride. She had always known her father was strong, but now she saw how his strength could change not just her life but the lives of many others. The effect of the assembly lasted. The bullies, once so eager to mock her, began to act differently. They didn't become her friends overnight, but they stopped their tricks. A few even muttered apologies in the hallway, awkward but genuine. Maya accepted them quietly, knowing it wasn't easy for them to admit they were wrong. Slowly, her world at school began to change. She joined group activities more often, and students started to include her in conversations. Some asked her questions about how she managed her schoolwork without sight, and Maya explained patiently, glad they were curious rather than cruel. For the first time, she felt like her blindness wasn't just something others mocked, it was something they respected her for overcoming. At home, she shared these small victories with her father. Marcus listened with a quiet smile, nodding at her progress. He didn't boast about what he had done, and he didn't take credit for the changes. To him, the victory was seeing his daughter walk with her head held high again. But the biggest lesson was not for Maya, it was for the bullies themselves. They had once thought strength came from laughter, from pushing others down. Now they had seen a different example. They had seen a man who had faced real danger, who carried real strength, and who chose kindness instead of anger. That example stayed with them, shaping their actions in ways they didn't fully understand yet. As weeks turned into months, Maya grew more confident. She answered questions in class without hesitation, she walked through the halls without fear, and she even began to help other students when they struggled. She became known not just as the blind girl, but as the girl who never gave up, the one who always found a way to succeed. One afternoon, as she walked out of school, one of the bullies approached her. His voice was hesitant, unsure. "Maya," he said, I wanted to say sorry. For everything." Maya paused, her cane tapping lightly on the ground. She turned her head toward his voice and nodded. "Thank you," she said softly. The boy shifted awkwardly, then walked away. It was a small moment, but it meant everything. At dinner that night, Maya told her father about it. Marcus listened, his eyes thoughtful. "That's what change looks like," he said gently. "Not perfect, not instant, but step by step." Maya smiled. For the first time, she truly believed that things could get better not just for her, but for others who faced the same pain. Her father's lesson had reached beyond the walls of their home, beyond the walls of the school. It had planted seeds of respect in the hearts of those who once chose cruelty. And Maya, once the target of whispers and laughter, now walked with quiet pride, knowing she was never alone. The seasons began to change, and with them, Maya's life at school shifted in ways she never thought possible. What once felt like a place of constant dread was now slowly becoming a place where she could learn and even enjoy herself. The whispers that had once cut into her heart grew quieter, replaced by small greetings and nods of respect. The students who once mocked her began to notice her courage, and even teachers spoke of her determination as an example for others. Maya's father, Marcus, still kept a close watch, though he did so quietly. He didn't hover or interfere, but he made sure to stay connected with the school. Sometimes he visited to talk with the teachers, other times he stopped by to check in with the principal. And every so often, he would step into the cafeteria or the hallways, not to scare anyone, but simply to show that he was there. His calm presence reminded everyone of the lesson they had learned, that real strength was found in respect. For Maya, each day began to feel lighter. She still carried her cane, still tapped her way through the halls, but now she walked with her head higher, a small smile on her face. She no longer rushed past crowds with fear in her heart. Instead, she walked steadily, knowing that she belonged there just like everyone else. One morning, during a group project in class, something unexpected happened. A student who had once laughed at her struggles asked her, politely, if she wanted to join his group. At first, Maya hesitated, unsure if it was a trick. But when she agreed, she found that the group treated her with kindness. They asked for her ideas, listened carefully, and even adjusted their work so she could take part fully. By the end of the project, the group had created something wonderful, and Maya had discovered that she could be not only included but valued. Moments like these began to stack up. Another time, during a fire drill, a classmate gently guided her outside, making sure she didn't feel lost in the crowd. During gym, a girl offered to be her partner, explaining the game step by step so Maya could join in. For Maya, these small acts of kindness felt like giant victories. They were proof that the cruelty of the past was fading. Still, the memory of the bullies lingered. She sometimes heard their voices, though softer now, filled with hesitation instead of arrogance. A few had even spoken to her directly. Their apologies were clumsy, sometimes awkward, but they mattered. It showed that they had begun to understand, that they had changed, even if just a little. Maya accepted their words quietly, not holding on to anger. She knew forgiveness didn't erase what happened, but it made room for healing. At home, her father continued to encourage her. They spent evenings reading together, with Marcus's deep voice filling the room. Sometimes he told her gentle stories from his past, less about battles and more about the lessons he had learned about patience, resilience, and hope. He reminded her that everyone carried scars, but scars could also be proof of survival. Maya listened closely, taking every word into her heart. As weeks turned into months, something remarkable began to happen. Maya no longer felt like just a student trying to get through the day. She became someone others looked up to. Her classmates admired how she never gave up, how she answered questions with confidence, how she never complained even when things were hard. Teachers noticed it too, praising her not just for her intelligence but for her character. One afternoon, the school held another assembly. This time, it wasn't her father on stage, it was Maya. The principal had invited her to speak about her experiences. At first, Maya was nervous. Standing in front of a crowd was hard enough, but speaking about her struggles felt even harder. But when she stepped onto the stage, cane in hand, she took a deep breath and remembered her father's steady voice. She spoke softly but clearly. She told her classmates about what it felt like to be laughed at, how lonely it had been, and how much courage it took to keep coming back every day. She didn't name names, and she didn't accuse. Instead, she spoke about kindness, about how even the smallest gesture could make someone feel seen and valued. She ended by saying, "I may not see the world with my eyes, but I see it with my heart. And I believe we all can make it brighter if we choose to treat each other with respect." The room was silent for a moment, then filled with applause. Students who once ignored her clapped loudly, and some even stood to show their respect. Maya felt tears in her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of pride. Her father sat in the audience, his heart swelling. He had faced many victories in his life, but this moment watching his daughter stand tall and inspire others was the greatest of them all. After the assembly, students came up to Maya, some to thank her, some to apologize, and some just to say they admired her courage. For the first time, she felt not like an outsider, but like a leader. The bullies who once made her life miserable stood quietly at the edge of the crowd. One of them, the boy who had once tripped her in the hall, stepped forward. His voice shook as he said, "You're braver than all of us. I'm sorry for what I did." Maya turned toward his voice and gave a small smile. "Thank you," she said. And with that, the chapter of cruelty finally began to close. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Maya still faced challenges every day. She still struggled with the things most students took for granted. But now, she faced those challenges with a sense of pride. She knew she wasn't alone. She had her father, who would always stand by her. She had classmates who now respected her. And most importantly, she had herself, her courage, her strength, and her heart. Her story spread beyond the school. Teachers shared it with other classes, parents spoke about it at home, and slowly, Maya's courage began to inspire more than just her classmates. It became a reminder that kindness could change lives, that respect could heal wounds, and that even the smallest voice could carry great power. At home, one evening, Marcus sat with Maya on the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky with colors she could not see but could feel in the warmth on her skin. "You've changed more than just your own life," Marcus said softly. "You've changed theirs too." Maya leaned her head against his shoulder. "I couldn't have done it without you." Marcus smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "You always had the strength inside you. I just helped you see it." As the evening grew quiet, Maya realized something important. She was no longer defined by her blindness or by the cruelty she once faced. She was defined by her courage, her kindness, and the love of a father who never stopped believing in her. And with that, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the same unshakable spirit that had carried her through the hardest days. And somewhere in the halls of her school, the memory of her journey continued to whisper, not in cruelty this time, but as a lesson. A lesson that respect is strength, kindness is power, and courage can change everything.